always do a crappy job, and she ends up doing it herself. I'm like, why do you even ask me to do this? You know, let me do the real kind, you know, where you use your hands. Not just...
Do they normally pick like really complicated projects?
No, it's easy shit, you know, but I just don't do it very often, and so when it takes me a while to remember how I did it the last time, and I did one PowerPoint for Mary Streeter before she left, and it took me like hours to do this very simple thing. I was very proud of it, and I could tell it was really lame because Lindsay went, "That's such a good try." I'm like, oh. I'm like, just give me like real stuff, okay? Pens, pencils, colored paper, you know, I can do it.
Wait, you said a PowerPoint? Or?
Yeah, it was a PowerPoint slide.
Oh, okay.
Like a poster or something. And the birds all had like things that they were saying. It was pretty cool. But it took me a long time, and somebody who really knows what they're doing can do it like instantly. And then I feel stupid, so I'm like, don't ask me to do that.
I guess with enough experience though, like that's the kind of tools they were playing with. Like you figure Kathleen or younger, like Nicholas, they're going to grow up where free applications on their phone mimic what PowerPoint looks like, and they're all just growing up doing
even
that.
Allie, she goes, you know, she's like 18 months old, and she already knows how to do it.
I think what's really impressive is knowing the amount of pressure they need for the screen. Because I feel like a lot of older people struggle with that. Like they're picturing old capacitive screens that they might have known 10 years ago. So, like there's this lady at work who was like 65, and she would just like, I'm like, you don't, like you don't have to do it that.
Get that bitch.
And then she would do it with her fingernail. I'm like, no, like just casually.
Yeah.
And it took her a while to get it down. But of course, once it's right, you know, it's not really taught so much. It's just learned intuitively. But it took a while. That was kind of funny.
I was looking through those questions. There's a lot of them. I didn't expect to see that many.
I should have narrowed them down a little bit. I think I'll go through everybody else's here, and mine might be redundant because I think that they phrased theirs better. All right, so one of the questions was, well, before we go on, we'll establish that you are Suzanne Wells.
Absolutely.
Formerly of Suzanne Lawson, formerly...
Suzanne Heffelfinger, and my actual real last name was Kapal. Back then, no one cared.
Exactly.
My real last name.
And it is 2015 of July. No, sorry, June 27th. So we're almost to July.
Yeah.
One of the first questions one of your kids had for you was, what would you have done differently if you couldn't have medically had kids? Would you have adopted or fostered or just not have any and been a career woman?
I had this. Actually, it was kind of a fantasy after I had kids. I thought, you know what I would have done is I probably would have worked and packed away a ton of money until I was like 30 and then gone to a sperm donor. Had kids that way. Oh, but if I couldn't medically do it, I would have probably adopted.
Yeah.
Kids were going to be a part of my life. I couldn't not do that. I'm not a career person.
Yeah.
By nature.
I could see that. Have one kid and just boil the hell out of them.
I would have tried to have more than that, but
okay.
Now that I look, I would have maybe alleviated the man part.
It's just independently spawn children.
If I could have, yeah.
That's funny. Would you still have had 6 or aimed for that?
I remember telling my mom when I was 12, I'm going to have 5 kids.
Yeah.
And she would laugh at me and go, you go, you know, you do that. So yeah, that number was in my head, so I figured, well, one more is not going to make or break me, so.
Well, did you originally aim to have 6 then, or 5?
No, I aimed to have 5.
Okay.
You came a little sooner than I was ready, but that's okay.
Then Kathleen was just a total accident.
No, Kathleen was not an accident. No, Craig was like, you had 5 with him, you're going to have 1 with me.
Oh,
and I could have gone either way, but I'm glad I had her.
Yeah. She wasn't a total mistake, so that's good.
No, she was, I was pregnant before her, and then I miscarried, and then I had her. She's the only thing that made that union not feel like a total and complete waste if it wasn't for her.
Well, that's a good point. Like, coming out of it, it's hard to feel like there was any results, maybe, as far as being married to him.
It just seemed like a really hard, long 9 years. And she's the only thing that made it worth it. I think if she hadn't been born, I would have felt like, wow, that was a complete waste of a decade of my life. But yeah, she's the one that made it worth it.
So let's go back a little bit further than that. We kind of jumped directly into your kids. I was sort of curious about your childhood. You were born in '56, right?
Right.
So when you were little, what did you and your friends do? Assuming you had friends.
Yes, I had
Okay.
many friends.
That's good.
Tons of friends. No, that was my sister. She was the one with tons and tons of friends. I had usually had 2 or 3 really good friends. Pick an age, and I can tell you.
About
what I did.
12.
12.
Right, preteen, and
I was a tween.
yeah. Around the time most girls these days would want to go to the mall or
Yeah,
text
we
their
didn't have
friends.
malls or anything in Simi then. It was a really small town. We did a lot of walking because back then parents did not drive you anywhere.
Yeah.
There was a shopping center that was about 3 miles away from where I lived, and we would get up some, go cash in some bottles for money and then walk up there because that's where the theater was.
Yeah.
Back then, parents could get rid of their kids for like 4 hours for 50 cents. It cost a quarter to get in, and then 25 cents for a drink and candy. So we used to do that. We rode bikes all the time. We skated. We rode skateboards. We were outside all day long. There was nothing to do indoors. And if you hung around too long and acted bored, you were doing chores that you didn't want to do.
Kind of like the Wonder Years where he tells his dad.
Totally, yeah. He says, that was like a flashback. I just looked around, oh my God, that's my dad. Because I remember saying that once, and I was out there cleaning the garage out. And they had those big, ugly, nasty spiders, daddy long leg things. Yeah, so you just never did that. You just went outside. Stay away from your parents as much as possible, and they won't make you do anything you don't want to do.
It's a pretty good tactic. We could probably re-adopt that.
It worked, yeah.
Was there a particular age when you realized your parents didn't know everything?
When did I figure that out? Probably didn't know everything. Probably in junior high, about that time. I'm not sure I ever thought that they knew everything to begin with, but I think I was starting to become aware of what I consider to be their faults. Things they really could have improved upon if they wanted to.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. They never asked me for that list, so I thought, okay, you're on your own then. Wanted to help you, but
What was one of your earliest memories?
My earliest memory is watching my grandfather make that stool that I had carried around with me,
right.
and I gave to Emily.
Okay.
That's my earliest one. I think I was 3. I remember wearing a dress, and I remember skipping around the yard, doing nothing. And he used to make everything by hand. He didn't have power tools or anything, and more than likely got the wood from a abiding tree somewhere. And I remember he was working on one of the legs, and he was carving it out. And I remember skipping up to him and asking him, "Is that for me?" And I remember him chuckling and saying, "Yeah, it's for you." Little kids, they think everything's for them. And then I just skipped away.
Was it really for you?
No, I don't think it was. But
you ended up with it somehow.
Yeah, he was just messing with it and decided, yeah, it was for me. So,
that's funny.
Yeah, that's the earliest one I had. And the next earliest was when he died, which was just a few months later. I was taking a bath. My mom was sitting in there with me, and my Uncle Jack, who had gone up, they were going to meet up in Big Bear. My grandfather had some land, this old trailer he would hang out in, and he went up there earlier in the week, and Jack was supposed to meet him up there, and Jack was like 16. He was really young. He had quit school and went, and he went up there, and Grandpa had been up there, and he had died in his sleep. And so he came back down. He was telling my mom, and my mom went to my grandmother because we lived behind a house behind them. And I remember my uncle sat there with me, and I remember asking him, you know, what's going on? Where's Mom going? And he goes, oh, it'll be all right, you know.
It's okay.
You don't need to know. Just take your bath, you know, be happy. So those are the two earliest ones that I remember, and I think I was 3 at the time.
Do you have a memory of a particularly embarrassing moment that you wouldn't mind sharing with everybody?
I guess the one that hits me first, when I was younger, I was 8 years old, and I wet my pants in class because I was raising my hand. The teacher wouldn't call on me, and by the time she did, I stood up and whizzed all over myself in front of this boy that I liked. And of course, later when I ran to the bathroom, and I'm like, oh boy, how am I going to deal with this? And I remember coming back, they were telling me, next time just go, which was like, you know, little kids, you don't just go and leave the class, you know. You raise your hand, you could get vaporized or something if you leave without permission.
Was that during a time when teachers could whip you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Without fear of going to prison anyway.
That's right. It's just, well, I was a big rule follower back then, so, you know, rules were to be adhered to.
Yeah, it didn't
no
occur
matter
to you
what.
to break them. Or
You wet your pants in class, that's just what has to happen, I guess. But there was a really one, probably the most humiliating one, was in high school. There was this guy that I really, really liked, and he was going with a friend of mine, and she had broken up with him or something, and we were in band, and we were getting in formation to go parade marching, you know, practicing, and he was right next to me, and he was in a bad mood, and he was the type of person that just took it out on whoever was closest, and started, you know, making fun of me about something. I don't remember. I just remember just standing there, not knowing what to do, and just what I should have done is take my trombone, you know, and shoved it where the sun don't shine. But back then, and I just remember just standing there horrified because everybody was quiet and they're all staring at me, and you know, he apologized later, but that was super embarrassing. Now I'm too old to be embarrassed about anything, so. One of the advantages of aging. Don't let too much of those kind of things bother you.
What is something you wish you knew when you were younger?
That I know now?
Yeah, presumably. But
Younger? How young?
I don't know. Like, just it's one of those things where I think people discuss or digress, or at least I hear them digress about what they wish they had known that would have significantly impacted their life. So, whatever age that would have been relevant.
I wish I had not been so anxious when I was younger, worrying about everything.
Yeah. What sort of things did you worry about?
Oh, God, everything. If anything, even when I was in my early 20s, before I had kids, if anything was going to be different about my day, that was, you know, if I had to go somewhere or do anything out of the ordinary that I wasn't used to doing, I used to just worry about it.
Yeah.
I would just, you know, I couldn't sleep, you know, it's just stupid stuff like that. And I was really shy, and just going up to somebody and talking to somebody was really hard. And so I remember making myself go up to, like, somebody in a mall, a store person, and ask them what time it was, just to practice not feelings. And then after that, because I thought, well, they can't yell at you or be mad at you, you know, they have to be nice to me.
They have to like me.
They have to be nice to me. And then after I got enough that going like that, then I would ask somebody in the mall that I didn't know, you know, obviously a stranger, ask them what time it was. And that's kind of how I pulled myself out of it.
So this was practiced. It's not something you just came to a realization about.
No, I came to the realization I didn't like being like that, and I need to do something about it because it had gone through my childhood and to high school and everything else. And boys, oh God, don't make me talk to a boy, you know. I would just clam up like crazy. So I just got tired of being like that and being anxious all the time. So I just made myself
How
do
old-
those things.
How old were you when you did that?
Like 20, 19,
Oh,
20.
okay. So it was an adult decision. You weren't
Yeah,
like
I was
a
married
precocious
at the
child or
time,
anything.
yeah. I just, got tired of being like that, and I was stupid. There's no reason for me to be so anxious about things. Now I have no trouble.
That's pretty cool. That's a neat
Yeah.
idea. Didn't you do something similar with, or at least you used to bring up that you would study math and like that you were so bad at it that you would go through the textbook questions yourself or something like that?
Yeah, I struggled through math all through school, and in ninth grade was the algebra. That was the last math class I had to take, and I passed it with a D. I was like, glory hallelujah, I never have to take math again. And so in my senior year, I was ahead enough in class that I could take a few classes in college, in the junior college nearby. And they had this class called Elementary Algebra, and it was for math phobes like me, adults. And I took that class, and it made me realize I wasn't the only one that was bad at it.
Yeah.
And I realized too that it's like anything else. You just have to go through, like, word problems. Everybody hates word problems. And there was one time I went through every word problem in the book, and it was like 200 of them, to try to find the pattern that what was relevant in the word problem, what wasn't. And I finally figured out the what you call not the solution, but whatever it is, the direction of what I was supposed to look at and what I'm supposed to ignore.
Right, yeah, especially with word problems.
Right, because they give you all kinds of stuff, but you're like, okay, what is relevant and what isn't? And and after that point, I realized word problems weren't that hard, and I actually started to enjoy doing them.
Yeah. So you've obviously, we brought up that you've had a lot of kids, and your parenting was never identical for each kid. What's something that you feel has changed most about how you parent that I would guess would be a positive thing, but compared to, say, how you raised Natalie versus how you raised Kathleen or myself?
Oh, yeah. In the beginning, I kind of went with what I knew and what I grew up with, which I didn't like, but at the same time I didn't know any better, and I just started reading more books. The first book I read was called what is it? Disciplining it was called The Strong-Willed Child, which your sister was. Because by 3, I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to get through this. This kid is so hard to deal with. And I just read, different techniques on how to do things. And since each kid is different, you have to get that through your head, that just because genetically everybody is from the same parentage, they're not clones, they're all different. And so I just started reading more and more books and listening and finding people that, I guess now you would call them mentors, back then you didn't. People you admire, that you like their parenting style and what they do, and you get little snippets of inspiration that way. And as my parenting went, I realized I didn't have to be as rigid, but the rigidity had more to do with being embarrassed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you have this kid and is like twerking out in the middle of the grocery store, you're like, oh my God, everybody's going to think I'm the worst parent ever in the whole history of the world. You don't, when you're young like that, you don't realize that every kid in the universe has pitched a fit in the store sometime.
Yeah.
And you just don't worry about, what other people are thinking. And of course, as each child came along and the techniques changed, even within that one kid, as they grew older, it was a constant changing or constant moving target, I guess you could call it. And the things that worked the year before weren't working anymore. And as you guys got older, natural consequences became more and more my way of guiding you. That way I didn't have to be the bad guy all the time,
Yeah.
You could just go, I would warn you ahead of time, if you stand on that couch, you're going to fall down and hurt yourself, and if you did and you fell, I'm like, didn't I say that? Sucks that I'm right all the time, isn't it? So, it definitely is something that was ever changing. And when you and Kathleen came along, I realized that the rigidity and all that didn't need to be there. I was hardest on Chris and Nat. They were the guinea pigs, and Jay was easy enough, and so was M.
Yeah.
So you pretty much went, did your thing too. I don't remember you being particularly difficult.
Yeah, I don't remember having a lot of issues, or I do remember the running joke that I would always think you were yelling at me when your tone changed,
Right,
just a
just
twinge.
a hair. That's right. Nobody was used to, because all the other kids would come from somebody else. Their mom yells at them, and all I'd have to do is just tone it just a little bit different than what you were used to hearing. It's like, don't yell at me.
Emily wanted to know what's something your kids have taught you through dealing with their personalities day in and day out.
Oh God, you guys have taught me everything. I've probably learned from you more than I would have learned if I had never been a parent. I'd be like so stupid right now.
Just this ditz floating around.
Yeah, just clueless, wonder. I can't even. I mean, obviously you've taught me. Everybody has taught me patience and direction and how I wanted. Was hoping for the objective of you guys being independent and happy and that kind of thing, and and that a lot of times I think probably the biggest thing is just because a kid screws up and does stupid things, it's not intentional.
Yeah.
It's never with malice.
Or, not personal.
Yeah, it's not. They're not doing it to drive you nuts. They're doing it because they're learning. We learn from the time we're born till we die, and it's easy when you're older to look at a particular situation like you don't put that sponge in bleach. It's gonna take the bleach.
Right.
But when you're young like that, you don't know.
Yeah.
And so if I had to pick one thing, that would be the thing that kids do not do things to drive you crazy on purpose. They're just trying to figure out how the world is working, and what seems common sense to you is something they just haven't learned yet. So I continue to learn from you guys. I mean, I don't expect to not ever have that stop. It's just continuous.
Did learning ever become less embarrassing? I guess it would have to have, but I was just wondering if you remember a particular time or moment where you felt like you had a change in how you saw being proved wrong.
Well, I think I've always been pretty good at taking constructive criticism from people, and I have no problems admitting that I'm not the smartest human being in the world when it comes to you guys. I never expected you to be perfect because I'm not that way, and sometimes I think that the reason I felt that way is because I felt like I needed to be with my parents, that any screw up was considered, whether it was something small or something big, was treated the same, like the most catastrophic thing in the world.
Yeah.
If you ever did anything wrong. And I wanted you guys to know that I didn't expect you to be perfect, that I knew there was going to be mistakes, and it wasn't the end of the world. Things were, that's why we're here, is to learn, all of us, not just me, and not just you. So, and I always wanted you guys to know how much I loved you. I didn't want to ever hear anybody ask me, do you love me? I don't think anybody ever has. I think I was able to convey that enough. Because I remember asking my mom if she loved me, and I remember just getting this irritated look like, of course I do.
Why do you even have to ask?
And it when you say something like that, but then you give the attitude, it's very confusing. Well, you say you love me, but you're all PO'd at me right now.
Right. Way to not have any insight at all as to why your child is asking you that.
That's right, yeah. Instead of, but that generation was all about, we're just right, okay? We're parents, we're right, you're wrong. Don't ever question what we say or do, And if we do something wrong, don't expect an apology either. It's not going to happen.
Just see rule 1.
Just, yeah, that's right. You know, there was never an admission of, wow, I really screwed up there. And one particular time that I remember with my mom was in high school. I think I was 17. And I know if she was sitting here, she'd roll her eyes at me. But I had spent, you know, weeks saving up for these overalls, which was the thing back then. I know it's not now, but it was cool back then. And I bought them there $10, which would be like $50 now. It was just an absorbent amount of money. And she was so irked at me. I mean, every body part was covered, but she just hated these things. And she told me once, she says, I don't want you ever to be in public with me with these on.
Damn.
I'm like, hey, fine with me. You know, as long as I can wear them to school and do everything else, that's fine. Yeah. And one day, my dad, who normally picked her up from Kmart where she worked, threw the keys at me and said, go get your mom. You know, I have a ball game. I have things to do. And I was wearing them and forgot. And so, you know, so he just said, go, you're going to be late. Yeah. And so I got in the car, and I'd forgotten about it. And I went into the store, and she saw me, and the look on her face was just horrified. And I just remember going, oh, God, I'm wearing these, and I'm in her presence out in public. And she wouldn't even walk with me. She just walked ahead of me. She goes, weird. Stay behind me. You know, I'm just like, oh, boy, I'm going to be dead. So, you know, she's all mad at me. And I said, I'm sorry, but Dad just told me to get you, and he told me to hurry up. You know, I have time to change. And so a couple of days later, I'm looking for these things, and they are gone. I can't find them anywhere. Load after load of wash comes through, and I finally go, I can't find my overalls. Where are they? She goes, I got rid of them. And I'm just like, oh. You know, I was so angry with her. I don't think I've ever been angry with her more than my life than I was then. Because I was almost an adult. Yeah. And it was a stupid thing for her to get upset about. And I remember in my 30s when she came out, you know, of course, no apology or any of that stuff. You broke the cardinal rule of wearing them in front of me in public, and this is what you get. And I remember when I was 30, she had come out to visit, and the topic had come up. And she looked at me, she goes, when are you going to get over this? You know? And I said, when you apologize to me for doing it. And she goes, fine, I'm sorry. You know, that felt really sincere. Yeah, but that was a wave of relief. That was as good as it was going to get from her. So I thought, fine, whatever. And I just forgot about it. But, you know, it wasn't even about the jeans. It was about the lack of respect that she gave me. So. Yeah.
So here, we'll take a break with a fun question. Somebody asked if you could go back in time and tell someone from your past anything, who would it be and what would you say?
The guy that embarrassed me in band in front of everybody, I'd give him the big fuck you. That's what I would do. If I could change anything, that's what I would do. I'd kick him in the balls and say, fuck you, I don't know why I ever liked you. And then I'd feel a lot better.
Well, what happened with him?
I don't know. He moved away.
How did he embarrass you?
Oh, he just started being really angry with me. I don't know if this is going to make sense. But when you're in a marching band, there's a person called the center guide. And that's the person that all the positioning goes for, and I got that dubious honor, and he wanted it. Evidently, it was some wonderful thing that you were just the top dog if you got to be center guide. I couldn't have cared less. It was like, stick me anywhere, I don't care. Yeah. Because I was fairly tall, and my stride was about right, you know, and so everybody did. Well, that came up like a bazillion times, and when he was mad that one day because of his girlfriend, he just started yelling at me about what a crappy center guide I was, all this crap. And everybody's so quiet, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. And, yeah, so he was just kind of creepy to me all the time. He liked to make fun of me, and at that point, I didn't have the humor that I do now. Yeah. And I took everything personally. But that particular moment, if I could relive that and stomp his nuts, I'd be okay. That's the only thing I think I would go back and change if if I could. Everything else in school went fine.
What did you have on your bedroom walls when you were, let's stick around with the age of 12 or whatever. Okay. Actually, whatever age had the most interesting thing on your walls. Let's go with that.
A lot of posters.
Of what? Or who?
Of, heartthrobs of that time. Davy Jones.
There we go.
David Cassidy. Tiger Beat magazine was in at the time, and they always came with these posters you could take out and put on your walls. I don't think any of the stuff that I did, I put up. I didn't really paint or anything back then. I just sewed. But stuff like that. I don't know if I had a lot of things on my walls other than that. I don't remember having any.
What was one of your earliest crafts that you took up, and what was the scenario surrounding that?
When I was 8, I was going to church, and they taught from 8, 9, and 10. They taught you cross stitch, and then the next year was knitting, and then crocheting. And so the stamped cross stitch that is stamped on the fabric, that was the first thing I learned. And it was a little sampler that said, "Home is where the heart is." I wish I still had it. I don't know where it is. Yeah. I struggled with it, though. I was like, oh, this is so hard. And then the next year I did knitting and crocheting. When I was 10, I wanted to learn how to sew. And I was dogged. My mother was going to teach me how to sew. Okay. I think she would have been just fine if I never learned how. She wasn't that good of a teacher, and she'd get frustrated with me, but it was one of those things you could just kick me over and over, and I would just keep coming back for more.
Like Rocky or something.
Yeah. I was going to learn how, come hell or high water, and by the time I was 14, that's what I did all summer, was make my clothes for the following year. So by then, it wasn't so painful. I still had trouble with certain things, and I'd get all upset, and she'd tell me, chill out. Come back later. You're too upset right now. But yeah.
Was that a common thing? Did a lot of other girls or boys sew their own clothes?
No. My friend Sue Shoop, she was a cheerleader in high school, and they were supposed to make they had different outfits they were supposed to sport. And she was supposed to be making them, but she'd just bring the fabric and stuff to me, and then I'd do it. Yeah. No, I don't know. I'm trying to remember if there was any. Oh, my best friend Debbie knew how to sew. She was really, really tall. She was over 6 feet tall, and most clothes did not fit her, so she didn't really have a choice but to sew, and her mom made her a lot of her clothes. So, she was the only other person.
What was your favorite TV show?
What age?
Whatever was most significant. I think I watched the most TV at 14, I guess.
We only had one television. It was downstairs, and if my dad was home, he hogged it. I remember watching the Monkees. I liked watching them. I was 11.
That was the band, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't a show called the Monkees, right?
Yeah, there was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't a real band.
Okay.
It was a show, and then they kind of faked it like they were a real band or something.
That's weird.
Yeah. I think there's another show that was kind of like that, too. I remember that one, and gosh, I don't remember very many. I don't think I watched that much TV. I remember, when I was little or younger, I used to watch this show called Sky King, and it was this cowboy who rode in an airplane, and he was so awesome. And he was like a sheriff, and he caught bad guys doing bad things, and that was a neat show. Let's see, I think of one more.
Sounds like TV wasn't a huge thing with you.
No, it wasn't. When you have one small television, and I know I watched it, but I don't remember any of them being that significant. Or I'd start to watch it, and my dad would come in, turn the channel, and I'd be like, okay, I guess my time's over. You know, there was no watching TV together unless you wanted to watch what my dad wanted.
Unless your favorite TV show is old westerns.
That's right, or sports back then. He'd watch golf if he had to. You know, he just dominated the television. He was like Craig on crack when it came to TV. And the funny part about that is wherever he went, whoever he visited, your TV was his. Okay, so don't even think you're gonna get to watch anything you want.
I actually remember that happening in Irvine, and I think your mother scolded him or
Oh
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was when Princess Diana was killed.
Oh.
Craig wanted to watch that stuff all day long, and my dad could care less about anything that happened over in England. Yeah. And they had come to visit, and he just kept commenting on us, you know. I'm like, this is driving him crazy. And my mom took him out on several walks and informed him that, you know, it was his television and he was just going to have to roll with it. So I thought that was pretty funny. The one time I think all the TV watching that I remember was when you guys were young, when we would watch TV together, like in Living Color. I don't know if you remember much about that.
A little bit. I remember Fire Marshal Bill. He stuck out in Jim Carrey.
That was a really funny program, and those were the days when Dad felt that TV was, you know, like, oh.
Embarrassing.
Yes, you know.
We're not common folk.
Wasting your time watching television.
You could be playing clarinet at all hours of the night.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, practicing an instrument or something. And that one particular one they had was the girl that played Andrea Dice Clay. You can still YouTube it. It's so funny. It's still, you know, nice smutty humor.
Yeah.
And I remember him coming up once and watching this, and she was doing this thing on it, and I was like in tears. I couldn't even hardly breathe. I was laughing so hard. And he looks at me and goes, "That's not funny." And I'm just like, tears are coming down my cheeks. Like, I can't even stop laughing to tell you it was. And he'd walk off in disgust, you know. And we all had a good time doing it. That was fun. I remember those probably more than when I was a kid. I don't think I watched that much television.
Yeah.
Kind of hard when you have somebody that dominates it all the time, unless you're into sports.
And the TiVos back then were total crap. So.
Yeah.
So you were Mormon, right, as a kid? Or I guess I should ask, just how were you raised religiously?
Well, I wasn't raised Mormon. My grandmother converted to the church because of my Aunt Shirley, and my parents never went, but of course whenever I was around my grandparents, they would get me going, and I thought, well, that's cool, you know, and I'd go to church by myself, walk, it was only a mile away, and so I would go up there and go to it. It was a way of being with other kids and teachers and people that I liked. I think they felt sorry for me because I was always there by myself. But I learned a lot there, you know, learned a lot of things to, like the knitting and the crocheting and all that, and then later on, a lot about the Book of Mormon and the Bible and all that. So.
Careful with the mic.
Oh,
sorry. I guess, I think Dad mentioned this the other day, that we were partially raised Mormon. Is that true?
Yeah, you guys were, by the time you guys were born, I was into the church. It felt like a good foundational thing, you know, as something to cling on to, and then Dad joined. And we went for a lot of years, a good 10 years. After you were born, or I think you were a year or two old, I started to feel like it was more about money and having people admire you for being good and all that kind of stuff. It just started to not feel like what I wanted to do, and of course I didn't realize it at the time, but every church, you know, preaches that they're the true church and that kind of thing. And I didn't feel like there was a true church. I felt like, you know, there are churches, and some people need that structure, that organized religion to that's how they worship and that kind of thing. And I just felt more and more like it just wasn't what I wanted anymore. And so, of course, I stopped going, and then Dad stopped going. And so I think Jay was the last one to be baptized in the church.
Do you still feel spiritual at all?
Yeah, I feel like spirituality and religion really aren't even the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I've met a lot of hypocrites in church, and I've met a lot of really true spiritual people that don't go to church. You know, they don't necessarily go hand in hand.
You ever felt like you had a religious experience, like you felt God within you?
I think I've always had a very strong belief in prayer, which is just basically talking to, you know, whoever you consider to be God, you know, whatever name that is.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of times when that has helped guide me in where I need to go when I didn't know. And I believe that prayers are answered. Sometimes the answer is no, when you want it to be yes. But I can think of several times when there was something I needed to do. Well, when I lost that job at Kone and I went back to Home Depot, I thought, you know, what am I going to do? I can't survive on this, and I don't know where I'm supposed to be. I don't know what direction I'm supposed to go in. And I remember praying a lot during that time, just going, I need you to show me. I don't know where I'm at. I don't know where I'm supposed to be. And shortly after, I think within 3 weeks after, that is when Nat's friend Heather Dyer called her and said, there's this really good opening within the organization I work for. Your mom would be perfect for. And the thing that makes that so unique is I probably met Heather once.
Yeah.
And Nat had not told her I was out of work, and it just came out of nowhere.
Oh, really? She didn't know you were in need of it at all?
No.
That's interesting.
She told Heather, she goes, I can't even believe you're calling me. Mom just lost her job, and she has to go back to Home Depot again. And I almost didn't want to do it because I didn't have a real good experience with the office job at the Justice Department. But I remember Chris going, just try, Mom, you know, it could be different. And fine. You know, I need the money.
Yeah.
And so I went down and interviewed for it, and I got it. And it, from the first day, it just felt like, you know, putting the glove on it just felt right.
Yeah. I remember you describing the Justice Department and how really catty and gross that whole office atmosphere sounded like.
It was such a negative, backbiting atmosphere. I learned a lot. I mean, that 2 years, I can't even tell you how much I learned from how to work a computer, which I barely knew how to do. I mean, I remember I didn't know how to use a copy machine or a fax or any of that stuff. And I remember at the time going, boy, I have a lot of balls even trying for this job. The only thing I had going for me was I was older, which is what they were looking for, and reliable and that kind of thing. I thought, well, I just have a lot of things to learn, and I better learn them quick before they find out I don't know anything. But within 3 months, I pretty much had caught up to where I needed to be. But it was, I mean, I'm glad I had that experience because I was so green. I just didn't know anything about what office work was like or anything. And up until then, I really had only been in the working world for like less than 2 years. So I was home all that time.
That's right. You had worked as a security guard.
Yeah,
for Guardmark.
For Guardmark, for all of 7 months. Because I didn't go back until I was 45. So the last time I worked, I was 18. And I remember the girl at the HR just looking at me going like,
who are you?
Yeah, because I had to come up with 5 people that would vouch that I'd never been thrown in jail or took drugs in the last 10 years. And all I could remember were the people I went to school with, because there was nobody I had known that long that would really know that. And so it took me almost a month to get that information together with it. Everything had to be notarized. So I had to get 5 people to notarize this particular form, but I'm glad I did, because that was just enough office experience, even though that was really minimal, to get me into the Justice Department.
Yeah, I remember showing you how to use Microsoft Word and Excel on Office 2007, probably, with Windows XP.
Yeah, I didn't know anything. I knew nothing about nothing. about office work. I didn't know anything what formatting was or any of that stuff. But fortunately, I think tenacity has probably helped me more than anything when it came to getting where I am today, is just not being afraid to try even if you don't know anything.
Yeah. What do you like about being a grandmother as compared to being a mother?
I like seeing how everybody relates to their kids and the struggles they went through, and they're so similar to what I did. I like being a grandmother because you don't have that nervousness that you did when you had kids, you know, doing everything right, and you just hope you don't screw your kids all up, and you know, you realize that you really didn't have to worry about all that stuff. Your kids are going to make it no matter what, you know, they'll do fine. There is no one particular thing that you're going to do that's just going to mark them forever. But I enjoy it because you don't have that nonstop day, you know, so it's easy for me to come and enjoy a kid that's doing things that's driving their parents crazy, because I don't have to go through hours and hours and hours of it like they do.
Just leave.
Yeah, I've already done that, you know, and I can look at them and say, you know, it's really not that big a deal.
Yeah.
But, you know, everybody has to go through their own spiel. So that part, it's more relaxing than parenting was, especially in the beginning.
When you were a teenager to a young adult, what sort of things did you worry about? Well, I was thinking in context to the entire world, but maybe you didn't even think about that. Like, did you worry about atomic bombs or anything like that, or technology, or?
And when I was a teenager is when the Manson murders had gone on with Charles Manson. That was really scary because his farm or camp or wherever he was near Simi Valley, or in Simi Valley, somewhere in the hills. And so that was a really scary time. And I think, I don't know if the Zodiac killer was during that time too, but those kind of things were so sensationalized that became worrisome. We had like bomb drills and stuff, but I don't remember it. That seemed more like funny to me, that we even had to sit under our desks and all that. I remember the Vietnam War was on, and that's all you heard about when you watched TV. Maybe that's why I didn't watch a lot of TV, because it was all about how many people died that day, and it was so depressing, and it just seemed to go on and on and on. And it didn't seem to ever have an end or anything positive that came out from it. So, I mean, those kinds of things worried me a little bit, but I was pretty typical as a teenager, where you worried about a lot of superficial dumb stuff, you know, how you looked, whether you're cute enough, you know, why does this boy like me? It's because I'm not pretty enough, you know, this kind of stuff. So I guess it's just, that's your time to internalize everything, and you think everything's about you. And you find out none of it is.
Turns out.
Yeah, it turns out the world does not rotate on how many zits you have on your face.
What about as an adult? Did you ever worry about any other more abstract ideas? Like for right now, a lot of people are afraid of automation and drones and things like that, and where technology is going to take us. Was that a concern for you in the 70s and 80s?
No.
No, not at all.
70s and 80s, that was a time when the women's movement was really getting into full swing, and women were starting to work more and try to get jobs that weren't so menial. I guess when I was younger and had kids, I was just worried about being able to keep up with everybody and make sure I was teaching you the things that you needed to know, so that when you were 18 or 19 or whatever, you had a good basis which to draw on. Obviously, you can't teach your kid everything, but to have that good foundation that you pretty much know how to take care of yourself. You're still going to make mistakes and do stuff wrong, but you know, you have the the basic knowledge. That was always forefront in my mind that I wanted to make sure you guys could handle being alone in case I were to kick or not. I wanted to know that you would be okay if I were not around.
Yeah.
You would be able to function, and I think I accomplished that.
I think so too.
I'm always amazed that there aren't people that think that way. Because most people that have, their 20-something kids are still living at home. They're just like, I have life insurance. What does that have to do with anything? That kid's going to burn through that insurance like crazy, and they're still not going to know anything.
I always wondered why they weren't more concerned by the idea that their kid was so content not to have a serious job or anything like that.
Yeah.
They always talked, like I've had some adults ask me, when I moved out and what I did, as if it was something I internalized and decided that their kids didn't. And I think they kind of missed the idea that their kid was never, like it wasn't projected onto the kid that he had to leave.
Right, there was challenge that, there's a couple directorates in our group that their kids had gone through college, got their degrees, and were living at home playing video games all day. And they were just like baffled as to how this happened, and I'm like, and I think, and I would try to suggest that maybe by giving too much and providing too much without any expectation, it might be the problem. And, and I can remember actively thinking about the time you guys would turn 9 or 10, that certain privileges were given, but there was also expectations that went with that.
Yeah.
And so that each year there were more rights and things that you could do, but with that came, more responsibility too.
Yeah.
So that by the time you were old enough, and of course we talked about it a lot, it was always expected that you guys would have your own, lives. Who wants to live with their parents? It's, of course, in my generation, we couldn't bolt fast enough. It was like, you turned 18 and you were like, you were gone.
Yeah.
It wasn't fun to live at home. Your parents were a big drag. And maybe that's the problem. We're just too fun to be with.
I always wondered if America would switch over culturally over the course of 100 or so years, or longer, just like it was probably expected not that long ago to always stay with your parents, or as a more or less your family would stay together and support the farm or whatever it is you all did. But that almost seems to be coming back almost incidentally, not because it's necessary, but maybe because it's just, well, I guess in job sense it could, but maybe also kids just don't mind their parents anymore. Maybe all this progressiveness has made all of you so much more tolerable.
I think I think our generation is just like so much cooler than my parents. My parents' generation was the, you don't have to like me, I'm your mom and dad, this kind of thing, where we felt we wanted to have more of a close relationship with our kids. I mean, that was the objective too, is to have the best relationship possible. Where I'm pretty sure nobody in my parents' generation ever even thought of that.
Yeah.
It was not like, And with that came a little bit too much passivity when it comes to teaching your kids what to do. I mean, you're their first teachers. You're the ones that are supposed to show your kids how to be in the world. They're not going to live with you forever. And they shouldn't want to. They should want to have their own life and do what they want to do and not be dictated forever.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have too many questions left. I guess I was going to combine a couple of the last two.
Okay.
How did you want to be remembered by your children and grandchildren? Like what sort of personality traits or maybe certain events that you would want them to remember?
I would want them to remember how much, of course, that I love them, that there's never one way to do something, that they had a grandma or a mother that wasn't afraid to tear her bedroom apart and make a shop because it made sense in her life. And even though other people will look at her and go, wow, she's so nuts, that's okay, that, to live your life exactly how you want to live it is a good thing. Because happiness, that's why we're here, is to find ways to be happy and do whatever it takes. And I would want them to remember that humor is not just for having fun, but can get you through the bad times.
Yeah.
That even though you're mad about something, you can turn it around and laugh about it, within a short period of time, making fun of whatever the situation was that ticked you off in the first place. and that I would want them to know how much I enjoy spending time with them, that, they're my favorite people in the world. There isn't anybody I would rather spend time with. And that if, that's why I do what I can do. If somebody's willing to hang out and do something, I'll change whatever I can to make it happen. And my friend Peggy said since her kids invite her to do stuff all the time and she always says no. I'm like, why? Why would you do that? She goes, they're going to stop asking me. I'm like, yeah, probably. But why wouldn't you want to spend time with them and do stuff? But
maybe her kids are totally lame, unlike us.
She has really nice kids. I've met both of them. I don't know. She just gets in this mode where she wants to stay home and just be left alone, I guess. But she babysits for them a lot, for her son. And she'll change her plans to be with them. I guess she likes little kids better, maybe. I don't know. She doesn't quite have probably the same relationship with her kids that I do with you guys. She's more of she can be a lecturer and give opinion a little bit too quick, and their kids are like, okay, Mom. Where I kind of do it stealthily, by suggesting certain things. Em totally called me out on this one thing. She was talking about something, and I said, if I had been my mother, I'd gone in lecture mode immediately. But I said something to the effect of, well, one day I did this and that. She goes, she totally, I know what you were trying to say. So at least that way you can acknowledge it or ignore it. It's not something that's so in your face.
Right, or demands a particular response.
Yeah, it demands a response right away. So I'm not sure how I learned that. It just kind of came about with, I don't know, wanting to give my opinion, but not in a way that you guys would go, again.
Yeah, the way you present information matters a lot. Otherwise, sales pitches wouldn't mean anything. So.
Right,
You got to sell whatever your advice is. So makes sense.
Yeah, and you can take it or leave it that way. And it doesn't have to turn into some kind of argument or something.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm going to stop the iPhone at least.